Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm Abigail Spanberger, and I represent Virginia's 7th District in the U.S. House of Representatives. I am so excited to hear directly from you about the issues that matter to you, to your family, and I look forward to answering your questions. Before we get started, I want to say that my prayers and thoughts are with our fellow Americans who have been devastated by this weekend's tornadoes. I know that many community members have friends and family who may be impacted. So I wanted to let you know that we are thinking of you and standing with you. And please be in touch with our office if I can offer any assistance or answer any questions for you. Uh, Today's Monday, and so far the week has gotten off to a very busy start. Earlier today, I was in Goochland County alongside so many community members and officials to announce a major $79 million investment in broadband internet infrastructure projects that are happening here in the 7th District and across Central Virginia. This funding is made possible thanks to the American Rescue Plan, which I was proud to vote for earlier this year. And it's also made possible through the tremendous public-private partnerships that we see in communities throughout the Commonwealth. It is great to see that these sectors work together to grow our economy and invest in the next generation of Virginians. I'm also so grateful to our local elected officials who've worked in partnership with my office and with the rural electric co-ops to really move these projects forward. When I first was elected, these were among lack of broadband connectivity was one of the primary things that I heard about county to county. And so to know that we've made such progress, I'm really proud of it. And I'm grateful to everyone who's been such a leader in this space in delivering broadband to our shared communities. I'm also excited about the investments found in the bipartisan infrastructure law, which was signed into law by President Biden just last month. I was at the White House as this legislation was signed into law, and I'm excited about this critical piece of legislation for a couple of reasons. It was the result of months worth of negotiations between the White House and Republicans and Democrats in Congress, the House and the Senate. And we worked together, finally got it across the finish line, and it's a huge win for Virginia. I was proud to be one of its most vocal supporters in the House, and I know that many of our region's workers and businesses are excited about the opportunities that this bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act will provide to keep Virginia competitive and maintain our ranking as the #1 state for business across the entire country. Virginia is really leading the way in rebuilding our physical infrastructure, and I'm proud of the work that we are doing and certainly proud of this legislation. But even with the exciting progress, I recognize that we continue to face challenges related to our economic recovery. Families are concerned about increased costs at the grocery store, at the gas pump, and in day-to-day expenses. And so earlier this month, I was proud to host U.S. Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg in Henrico County to meet with local business leaders, labor organizations, and community leaders to discuss our country's supply chain issues and challenges, difficulties, what our local businesses are experiencing, and to discuss how we can really work together to address these problems and lower costs. Finally, I know that over the past 2 years, we've had real challenges because of COVID, and it's been a difficult past 2 years marked by hardships for so many people across our district. And so ahead of the holidays, I hope that anyone who's listening or watching online is able to spend a bit of quality time with loved ones or friends. And I do hope that you find a degree of peace and calm. And I hope you are looking forward to a bright 2022. It is my it is my great honor to serve you in Congress. I'm so appreciative of everyone who's joining us tonight. And so with that, I'd love to begin the conversations. I look forward to taking your questions. You can press *3 to be patched through.
Great. Thank you, Congresswoman. Just as a reminder, folks, this forum is interactive, and we would love to hear your questions. If you have a question, you can press *3 on your keypad at any time to get into the queue to ask a question. A member of Congresswoman Spanberger's staff will collect your questions. You can also ask a question by submitting one through the portal below our online streaming player at spanberger.house.gov/live. Again, that's spanberger.house.gov/live. If you are watching on Facebook Live tonight and wish to ask Congresswoman Spanberger a question, we encourage you to visit that online streaming portal so that you can submit your question. And now we are going to head live to the phones. And we have Linda on the line. Linda, you are live. Go ahead and ask your question, please.
Okay, I wanted to ask you a question about you're trying to pass the Build Back Better bill, and I know there's a few things in there about prescription medications, but you're giving families who have double incomes, and some of them making $100,000 a year with a double income, child credits every month, from $3,300 to whatever for each child. What are you doing for the people who are on fixed incomes, Social Security, that the average payment is about $1,800, $1,500 a month, who have to pay their mortgage or rent, they have to pay their utilities, and they have to buy their food? So how are you going to help these people? What kind of aid are you going to give to them?
Well, Linda, thank you for the question. You mentioned the Build Back Better Act, and so where we are in the process towards that bill is we've passed a framework through the House of Representatives. It's going over to the Senate. Well, it's with the Senate where they're working on revisions, amendments. I'm working with some of my Senate colleagues on those actually as well. And so the question being, what are we doing particularly for seniors and for those on fixed incomes? So let me speak directly to that, again, noting that the bill is still in process. The Senate will make amendments and then push it back to the House. So there may be some adjustments along the way. But what I have voted for thus far is the Build Back Better Act framework that does a couple things, focused on helping those with fixed incomes, frankly, helping anyone on Medicare. So notably, the Build Back Better Act framework that I voted on does cap insulin costs. So particularly for those who require insulin to stay alive or have a family member who is diabetic, capping insulin costs is a tremendous source of relief for those who are diabetic. Broader group of people, those who utilize Medicare Part D, that prescription drug benefit, the copay would be capped at $2,000 per year. So for any senior who requires consistent medication, knowing that that cap would be $2,000 a year is substantial. One of the top issues that I hear about all across the district relates back to the cost of prescription drugs and the impact that prescription drugs have on seniors, on families. And so this cap on Medicare Part D would be a tremendous savings. Notably, the Build Back Better Act framework that I voted on also gives Medicare the ability to negotiate certain prescription drug prices, thereby creating some competition and allowing for downward pressure on those prices. And so that's importantly, when we're looking at seniors and those on a fixed income and retirees, particularly within the prescription drug space, that's where we've made really substantial legislative priorities to ensure that those who are utilizing Medicare Part D can afford it and can save substantially.
Great, thank you for the question, Linda. Our next question comes from Samuel from Henrico. Samuel, you're live. Go ahead and ask your question, please.
Good afternoon, Congressman. My question concerns the price of gasoline at our the price is high, and what can be done to bring down automobile gasoline prices. To me, it seems to be outrageous in the type of pricing that's going along here. So I want to know what measures have you all been working on, you have been working on to stabilize the gas pricing in our area.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Absolutely. So, and this is a question that impacts everyone, specifically across our district. And notably, we have people across our district with substantial commutes, predominantly by car. And so every additional penny that it costs us at the pump really matters to people, and especially those who commute. It's something you feel every time you're at the gas station, and it's a real challenge. In terms of what it is that I've done on this front, I urged the administration to release from the strategic oil reserve. That's something that now the president has taken that step, and I think that was the right step, and certainly help relieve a little bit of the pressure in terms of a supply chain challenge. That's one thing that I have done, and the administration followed suit. Certainly, beyond that, focusing on the larger issues that we're experiencing within our supply chain is incredibly important. And so the things that I have done in the space of the supply chain, I just voted for the Ocean Shipping Reform Act that passed the House with significant bipartisan support. It's a bill making sure that we are not just offloading, but onloading materials that are coming to our ports and then leaving our ports for the purpose of ensuring that we are keeping prices low and keeping container space readily available. Also, in terms of ongoing issues as they relate to supply chain, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act has multiple provisions within that now law that incentivize and help recruit, and a pilot program that would expand eligibility of truck drivers across the country, because part of the challenges that we're currently experiencing within the supply chain relate to truck driver shortages in some parts of the country. So these are all elements, steps that I've taken in tandem with the intent of addressing inflation issues, and specifically release of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is one thing that should be focused and is focused specifically on the cost of the pump.
Great, thank you for the question, Samuel. Our next question comes from Robert. Robert, you are live. Go ahead and ask your question, please.
Yes. Hi. I'm Congressman Spanberger. I was wondering about the Build Back Better plan that you voted for. You had expressed apprehension several times about that bill, and there are some provisions in there that I'm wondering about because I thought you were a moderate, and there are provisions regarding amnesty for illegals while our borders are open, and massive expansion of social programs that I don't know that we can afford. So how did you justify your vote for it?
Well, Robert, thank you for this question. The Build Back Better Act has many, many provisions in it. And certainly I have taken a thoughtful approach. I think, firstly, I will speak to one of the initial points. There's no amnesty in the bill. But in terms of the reason that I did support the bill, and proudly so, as it came through. And again, at this point, there's the bill, the framework that I voted on. We do anticipate changes within the Senate. And indeed, Robert, if you're concerned about issues related to the border, challenges at the border, I am actually working with some of my Senate counterparts on amendments to add into the Senate version, which will then come back to the House, border security related provisions, focus on staffing, focused on technology, to ensure that we are providing our border security agents with the resources that they need, that they are fully staffed, and ultimately that we are ensuring the right technology at the border, both for the processing of anyone who may be attempting to cross the border, but also for interdictions of any trafficking in illegal narcotics that might be coming across the border. So I'm working on that. Hopefully that will pass in the amendment process in the Senate and be in the bill that we ultimately pass into law. But in terms of the other provisions within the bill, some of the things that I think are incredibly important, and I'll speak again to the prescription drug prices. Prescription drugs and the cost of prescription drugs is one of the top things that I hear about from constituents across the district. It crosses age, it crosses rural communities, suburban communities. Frankly, it crosses political parties completely and totally, because everyone at some point in their time at some point in their life will require prescription drugs. But capping the price of insulin is something that has meaningful impact on people throughout our district. Capping the copay for Medicare Part D for retirees who are frankly at sometimes making choices between buying their prescriptions, picking up their prescriptions, and being able to put food on the table, and then allowing for Medicare to negotiate the cost of some of their most expensive prescriptions is incredibly important. competition is good, and Medicare should be able to negotiate the cost of its drugs, just as the separate system, the VA, is able to negotiate the cost of its drugs, and in the Medicare circumstance, pass those savings along to Medicare patients. Another provision within the bill that is important is continuing with the refundable nature of the child tax credit. So years ago, we as a country determined that raising children can be expensive, and giving tax credits is a way for our community to recognize that. And making that tax credit refundable is a way to ensure that value is extended to any family with children. And also making it refundable, but in monthly payments, is a way that makes it very usable. So this is building on an existing program, the child tax credit, making it refundable, and then making it monthly. I've heard from constituents across our district the significant value that this has had in their lives, or in their children and grandchildren's lives, and it's something that I am proud to support. It's an investment, frankly, in our communities and in our future across the country. We know that this change, making the child tax credit refundable and putting it in monthly payments, so you don't just wait for tax time till you file your taxes to see the benefit, has lifted millions of children out of poverty. And long term, we know that the cost of child poverty is about $1 trillion for our society every single year. So making this investment in the refundability of the child tax credit is a really valuable way for us to make an investment, not just in families today, but frankly in the future of our workforce and community. Notably, I'm the chair of the Conservation and Forestry Subcommittee of the larger Agriculture Committee, and I work a lot with farmers and producers across Virginia to see the places where they can employ conservation programs for the mitigation of climate change, and also for the benefit of their land, their crop, their animals, their work. And so expanding upon the conservation programs that are already successful and of great economic value to the Commonwealth and also to our farmers and producers is something that I'm proud of. So many of the conservation programs are oversubscribed and underfunded, and as part of the Build Back Better Act framework, we expand upon those programs, those successful voluntary programs. So those are some of the provisions within the bill that I support. And one of the reasons, and some of the reasons why, this bill, again, there was a lot of debate, a lot of discussion over what was going to go into the bill, but this is where we are currently. I am working with my Senate counterparts as we continue to make adjustments. As I noted, Robert, particularly I'm working on something related to border security and ensuring that our border agents have the technology and the funding they need. But looking forward to seeing that go through the United States Senate and then come back to the House with its changes for a vote.
Great. Thank you for the question, Robert. Our next question comes from Rory. Rory, you're live. Go ahead and ask your question, please.
Good evening, Congresswoman, and we appreciate these town halls and the ability to get communication between the citizenry and yourself. Appreciate it. This is more of a hybrid question where it's got an implicit recommendation, but a number of the calls earlier, both related to fuel costs and the inflationary effect on food and other things, all relate to the supply chain. The president, the administration, has thrown some incentives to the various ports around the country, which is positive. However, I find it easy and certainly bipartisan where there can be a possibility of having a czar that is completely focused on the supply chain and logistics. We have so many great people in the military who are logistics experts, and to get the recognition to the port personnel and to get this front and center with somebody that would be the central person that can give this recognition and keep it on the map and really almost for optics help in this cause.
Rory, I am so excited by this suggestion. And I would love, if you're not already signed up for our newsletter at spanberger.house.gov, for you to sign up, because 2 weeks ago, I publicly called on the administration to do exactly what you're suggesting, in a supply chain czar. And so I think you made a lot of really, really good points. And if I can just add to them to justify and explain a bit more my thought process, separate from your thought process, related to why a supply chain czar would be so important. And for anyone who's looking, we'll go ahead and I guess include that in our next newsletter so that you can see the information that we put out to the administration, the requests that I put out to the administration. And I raised this again with Secretary Buttigieg when he visited our district. So the reason that I called on the administration to put a supply chain czar in place is exactly what Rory, our caller, mentioned. And I promise Rory was not a plant, just a constituent who I'm appreciative that we thought alike on this. You know, some of these supply chain issues, it's a Department of Transportation purview, it's commerce, it's energy. It really can fall under the different secretaries who wear different hats. It's challenges directly at our ports, and some of the significant challenges that have been, widely reported at the port in Long Beach and the port in Los Angeles. Certainly now the president has ordered the ports to be working around the clock, and so we're seeing a little bit of a relief there in terms of offloading materials. We've now passed the Ocean Shipping Reform Act in the House, so we're making progress on a variety of different fronts. We passed this trucking provisions that were valuable within the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which is now law. So a pilot program expanding truck drivers and some of the provisions related to trucking, also additional provisions in that bill to recruit and retain truck drivers, also a provision in that bill that is originating in legislation that I wrote with a Republican colleague from Florida, focused on livestock haulers, trying to get livestock to processing plants, ultimately to the grocery store. All of these different buckets, there's the administration's doing things, Congress is doing things, the ports are working kind of independently to remedy some of the challenges, but having one person where their hat is, I am the supply chain czar, and I talk to anyone across the nation who's a part of this challenge, it's incredibly important. And so I called on the administration to do it about 2 weeks ago. So far they have not, but you have given me a little bit of motivation to continue pushing because I think it is incredibly important, hopefully for the reasons that I mentioned, but also the ones that you mentioned. So I do appreciate this call.
Thank you for the question, Rory. Our next question comes online from George. He asks, what are we doing in Central Virginia to help alleviate global warming and climate change?
Well, thank you for this question. Specific here in Central Virginia, I would actually call your attention to some of the great work of our farmers and producers in Central Virginia, notably within the Chesapeake Bay watershed. We have employed excellent conservation programs that are focused on strengthening the health of the Chesapeake Bay, which is important from an agricultural standpoint, aquaculture standpoint, and ultimately tourism. Also within our agricultural communities, employing conservation programs are not just good for soil health, but important for sequestering carbon out of the atmosphere. Across our district, we have livestock producers who employ rotational grazing techniques, so helping to ensure the health of the soil by rotating animals paddock to paddock, but also ensuring that we're pulling carbon out of the atmosphere by responsibly growing the grasses and grazing animals in a rotational means. There are tremendous conservation programs through the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and I'm proud to be the chair of the Conservation and Forestry Subcommittee that has oversight over these programs. And these are in existence. Within the Build Back Better Act, we are building upon those programs. I have been attentive and listening to the producers in our district who have explained to me some of the ways that these programs could be a little bit more flexible. And so I've written legislation to make them a bit more flexible, and I'm still working on getting those passed through the House, ultimately the Senate, and to the president's desk. I have another piece of legislation called the Grow It Growing Climate Solutions Act. This bill, I carry it in the House, and Senator Stabenow has carried it in the Senate with Senator Braun. It's bipartisan in the Senate, wholly bipartisan in the House, and it's passed the Senate already with flying colors. Planning and working to get it a vote in the House of Representatives so we can send it to the president's desk. And what that bill does is it allows for farmers who are employing techniques on their farms that sequester carbon to partake in carbon markets, and also foresters as well who utilize certain forest maintenance practices. Certainly throughout central Virginia, we have tremendous private forest land that are sequestering carbon and allowing for them to be part of a carbon marketplace that's certified through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So we have the certainty, the farmers have the certainty of knowing that they're entering into good business deals, but also that those on the business end who are purchasing these carbon credits know that there are actual purposeful and impactful practices that are being employed to sequester carbon. And so that bill is something I'm very proud of. It's passed the Senate. We're working on getting it through the House. Another thing as it relates to clean energy and energy efficiency, I have legislation focused on refundable tax credits for energy efficiency home projects to ensure that we can, it's not just about kind of producing energy through renewable efforts and conserving energy, but also making sure that we're not wasting energy because of leaky doors and windows. Notably, Virginia as a state is making tremendous progress with renewable energy, both solar panel installations on private and schools, private homes and schools throughout our district and the Commonwealth. And certainly we are on our way to being a leader when it comes to offshore wind. So those are some of the things that we're doing here in Virginia. And certainly I'm excited about the conservation and climate change related provisions within the Build Back Better Act, principally because I worked to craft many of them from my position as chair of conservation and forestry.
Great, thank you. Just a reminder, folks, that if you do have a question this evening, you can press *3 on your phone keypad at any time to get into the queue to ask a question. A member of Congresswoman Spanberger's staff will collect your questions. You can also ask a question by submitting one through the portal below our online streaming player at spanberger.house.gov/live. Again, that's spanberger.house.gov/live. And if you're watching on Facebook Live tonight and wish to ask Congresswoman Spanberger a question, we encourage you to visit that online streaming portal so that you can submit your question there. And now we'll head back to the phones, and we have Susan with our next question. Susan, you're live. Go ahead and ask your question, please.
Congresswoman Spanberger, it's an honor to speak with you.
Hi, Susan.
My question is, hello, in view of the what I consider to be a humiliating and disastrous retreat from Afghanistan just a couple months ago, I am wondering why the president has immediately turned to saber rattling against Ukraine. If we had won the war in Afghanistan, I might understand his tone or his, dare I say, arrogance. But having just lost the war in Afghanistan, can you explain to me why the president has immediately turned into the aggressor on Ukraine?
So Susan, I'm going to attempt to answer this one, providing more my opinion. I have not spoken with the president about his actions or the Secretary of State directly about some of the statements that have come out of the White House. I think that you certainly make this is an important question given the challenges after 20 years in Afghanistan and our departure from Afghanistan in really difficult circumstances. Recognition of any efforts or any future trajectory that could put us on a path towards any type of armed engagement, I think, is something that many Americans feel very, very weary about. And so I think from a perspective of someone who serves on the Foreign Affairs Committee, it is incredibly important that the United States take a strong defense of Ukraine as it relates to potential Russian aggression, that we verbally, principally stand up for our partners and allies who might be experiencing aggression by Russia or and many other nations. But certainly, I would say that in the circumstance where we're looking at, would there ever be any sort of um, engagement beyond heavy diplomatic tools? At this point, that would be a place where there would be congressional action required, constitutionally speaking. And so I would say that at this point, as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, we are looking at all of the diplomatic tools that exist for us to make a stand against Russian aggression. And strong, heavy diplomatic tools are where that type of engagement would kind of start and end.
All right, thank you for the question, Susan. Our next question comes online from Diana. How do you feel about all the illegal crossings at the Mexican border? What do you feel we should be doing to stop it?
Diana, thank you for this question. So, there's a couple challenges that we continue to face as it relates to immigration without legal status into the United States, and recognizing the root causes of why someone might come to the United States without legal status is important for us to be able to contend with the challenges of illegal immigration within the country, and notably. There are many, many jobs, particularly within the agriculture sector, that continue to need and hire people who do not have legal status. And so one of the bills that I have worked on, one of the bills I have advocated for, been proud to vote for, and it passed with significant bipartisan support, and I want to see it move forward in the Senate, is called the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. And the reason I think this bill is such an important piece of legislation is it acknowledges the fact that there are many businesses throughout the agricultural sector who need a workforce. And there are not enough visas for those individuals to legally become part of the workforce. So this bill takes the stance that we recognize this workforce is necessary. And so we want to ensure there are more visas allowed for those who are going to work in our country so they can do so legally. Let me say that again, so they can do so legally. It also ensures that our businesses, the farmers, the producers, the greenhouses that are hiring folks are able to do so legally, knowing that they have visas, knowing that they can process through this program. It also allows for individuals who want to come and work for a season and return home, work for a season and return home, to be able to do that year after year. It is, as proposed, this bill would be cost savings for the farmers and producers who want to bring people into the country legally, and allow for, once they've trained people up on the operations that are occurring at their farm, that they can come back year after year. The bill also calls for the utilization of the E-Verify program so that people who are hiring individuals coming in from another country, that they go through the process of knowing who's coming in, who's working on their farm. So this bill passed the House with significant bipartisan support, and I do hope that it will move forward in the Senate. Then separately, when we're looking at challenges and along the southern border, individuals continuing to come to the United States, there have been significant, massive natural disasters throughout Central America that have contributed to migration and efforts to cross into the United States. Part of what I recognize as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee and as a former CIA officer is that providing aid and support to individuals while they are in their home country mitigates some of the desire that individuals may have to leave their country, be it to go to the United States or frankly to any other country. And so where we can and have provided aid, particularly after natural disasters, that has been an important way for us to stop that trend of migration away from a disaster zone towards the United States, when frankly, many, many people would prefer to stay at their home. And then one more thing that I would mention, I passed a piece of legislation into law in the last Congress. I partnered with a Republican from Texas. President Trump signed the bill, and it's legislation focused on utilizing and leveraging our intelligence community to, again, understand and get at the root causes of immigration or migration towards the United States, and also recognizing the influence and problems caused by human traffickers and narco traffickers. I'm proud of this piece of legislation. Again, it was signed into law under the last president, and really trying to work at staving off and getting at some of the root causes of immigration for those who otherwise, barring the issues related to natural disasters or transnational criminal groups, would not be trying to make that move.
Great, thank you. Our next question comes from Preston. Preston, you are live. Go ahead and ask your question, please. Preston, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you so much. In your opening statement, you said you were excited and bragging about the $94 million that was spent on Goochland to do infrastructure on I believe you said internet. And I'm wondering how $94 million with a population of 24,000 with households of about 9,000, that's like $10,000 a household. Why are we spending that kind of money? What's the purpose?
So let me just clarify a little bit what that announcement was. It's a multi-county. 3 of the counties, Powhatan, Goochland, and Louisa, are within the 7th district where I represent. But this project is a project that spans beyond those 3 counties throughout Central Virginia. And what's exciting about this is a grant that they have received to bring broadband connectivity to Central Virginia, and through public-private partnership and through engagement from local counties. So it is not all federal dollars. It's the local counties joining together with the Central Virginia Electric Co-op, partnering and getting state grant funds as well in order to be able to connect broadband connectivity or broadband throughout Central Virginia, principally within the 7th district, Goochland, Powhatan, and Louisa. And so this is an example of where, from a federal perspective, through the American Rescue Plan, we provided significant flexibility to the way that localities can use those dollars, with an intention that localities know what they need as they are sort of pivoting out and building their economies as we are working our way out of the impact of COVID. And so to see localities like those I represent, Goochland, Louisa, Powhatan, among others, leverage those federal dollars through and in partnership with the state and with the Central Virginia Electric Co-op and its subsidiary Firefly to bring internet to the entirety of the county is amazing. And the reason it's so important is because it's necessary to the local economy. And since I was first elected, I've heard from business owners across our rural communities where they do not have access to internet. It impedes their ability to do business. Certainly during the pandemic, when so many of the schools around our district were closing down or impacted, school superintendents and boards of school boards were making different decisions based on the population of kids within their communities that could or couldn't access the internet. For farmers and producers, I was talking with a dairy farmer today, actually, we were talking about the types of advanced farming and agricultural technology that are available, that frankly are the standard, but if you don't have internet on your farm, you can't utilize them. You're wiring yourself up to do updates to your farming equipment when you should be doing downloaded updates like you would on a computer in a home that has internet. And so it's economically an imperative, and we are really getting to that point in our trajectory forward where broadband connectivity today is like electricity was 100 years ago. And we are leaving communities behind if they do not have that level of connectivity. And so I am very proud of my focus since I've gotten to Congress on the E-rate program, the Reconnect program, all of these different federal programs that support bringing broadband to communities, the American Rescue Plan, and now the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Plan. Because when we leverage those funds, when we make that support available, we see communities do exactly what's been done here in Central Virginia, which is bring internet to their residents. And so I'm grateful for the partnership and the work that I've done with our Board of Supervisor members there, school board members who have been active on these issues as well, because it's an economic imperative for our communities.
Great. Thank you for the question, Preston. Our next question comes from David. David, you are live. Go ahead and ask your question, please.
First, thank you all for what you do, everyone, and especially Abigail Spanberger. What I wanted to ask was just about mental health and a focus on any things that are in the works to help with improving the mental health, especially for kids and for the adults coming through this other side of the pandemic.
Thank you for this question. And sorry, I'm pausing while the screen comes back to me, but I'll begin speaking. So thank you for this question related to mental health. There's a couple different things. So I spoke a little bit about the American Rescue Plan, and that has great utility for our local school district. So with the American Rescue Plan, we sent money directly, federal support directly to school localities for the purpose of ensuring that they can make the right decisions about what their students need. And so I've seen that throughout some of the counties that I represent, for some school districts, that was increase in school counselors. Certainly, students have faced unique stressors over the past year and a half, and allowing for that money to be utilized for hiring school counselors has been important. Notably, we've also seen an increase in drug overdoses, more than 100,000 deaths this last year. And so I've focused my efforts heavily on recovery programs, notably under the substance abuse block grant funding, which is federal funding that can be utilized locally to support programs to fight substance use disorders and to help those in treatment. What I have proposed is ensuring that 10% of that grant funding is blocked and prioritized for recovery. So we make investments in treatment, we make investments in prevention, and in the end, when someone is in that longer term recovery phase, after working through the immediacy of their addiction, the support isn't there. And so ensuring that people have access to peer-to-peer counseling, ensuring that people have access to programs where they can help maintain the recovery that they've experienced, to ensure that recovery is kind of a part of our regular community and discussions and prioritized through these grant dollars will ideally also help to impact or fight the stigma related to mental illness, and specific in this case, challenges of substance use disorders and recovery. Overall, certainly ensuring greater flexibility for those who need to seek mental health resources is a priority, and something that I continue to work on specifically across the board, but for me specifically in the recovery space.
Great. Thank you for the question, David. Our next caller is Terry. Terry, you are live. Go ahead and ask your question, please.
Hi, ma'am. My question concerns ocean cubes, or what are known as containers. I understand that the Trump administration put 100% tariff on containers from China, where most of them were made, and then they increased it another 20%, which increased the cost of containers, and there's obviously a shortage of them now. The Biden administration, as I understand it, has not
remove those tariffs. Is the Democratic administration looking forward to ending those tariffs and making it easier to make up the supply chain deficit?
Thank you for this question. I have not had confirmation from the administration one way or the other if they do intend to. Certainly, the former administration, the Trump administration, put tariffs on a variety of different products, and so I've been in some conversations where we've questioned their intention, but I have not gotten confirmation. You raise a good issue, and it's one that I'll bring up again. But specifically as to their intentions to remove those tariffs at this time, I'm unaware of their intention to do so. But I will be following up on that. Though I would note again, with the Ocean Shipping Reform Act that we just passed in the House, that is aimed at getting at some of the challenges that related to container space. So we've been facing the issue where people will, shipping companies will bring containers here and then they will not take U.S. product back out. And so the Ocean Shipping Reform Act is, again, a broadly bipartisan bill meant to combat that practice and ensure that we're getting goods in, getting goods out, getting goods in, getting goods out. But specific to the tariffs on containers, I will follow up on that one. And if you want to be in touch with my office, I'll happily provide you with an updated response once I get one from the administration.
Great, thank you for the question, Terry. Our next question comes online from David. I'm concerned with the rise of authoritarianism in America. We may be witnessing the end of democracy in America. What are your thoughts?
I appreciate you raising a very serious question on this town hall. And certainly I would speak to the fact that I think democracy is facing significant challenges in the United States at this point in time. We see other nations utilizing false information. We see the proliferation of fake information meant to persuade Americans, meant to influence Americans in any host of ways. We know from the Mueller report, now that's going back a few years, that foreign entities endeavored to pit Americans against each other, right? So much of the discussion related to that report was focused on, what did or didn't happen in the 2016 elections related to the former president and campaign-related issues. But apart from that, an important and central piece of that report spoke about Russian efforts, influence efforts, influence operations attempting to sow distrust, discord, and disinformation within the American population. And that continues to be a major threat. We know that the Russians continue to do it. We know that there's been aggressive hacking efforts, separate and in addition to our networks, our companies, all in an effort to sort of put us in an uneasy place. And within our electoral system, efforts to create distrust in our electoral system have done significant damage. And we saw that ultimately resulted in the attack on the Capitol on January 6th. And I was in the Capitol. I was in the House chamber on the day of that attack. And it was awful. I'm a former CIA officer. I had trained for these sorts of events to occur if you're at an embassy overseas and it comes under attack, or you're someplace internationally and it comes under attack. Never in my wildest dreams would I have ever imagined that there would be a violent attack on the Capitol where police officers were beaten with flagpoles that have American flags on them. And we've seen their testimony. The Capitol police officers who were the first ones, the response, the Metropolitan police officers who responded after that, we've seen their testimony where they spoke about how they were beaten, where they were tased with their own tasers, where they thought they were going to die. This was an attack on our Capitol. It was an attack on our democracy. It was an effort to stop Congress from certifying an election. And I have significant concerns about the health of our democracy when some of my colleagues continue to be afraid to speak truthfully about what happened that day. And there's been some recent articles published where colleagues across the aisle have spoken somewhat candidly, though off the record, so not attributed to their own names, some of them on the record, about the real concerns and fears that they have, that they worry about political violence, and that's why they don't speak up. So there's a variety of things in terms of legislatively that I have been working on, first and foremost, to get at the issue of disinformation. I've worked on a variety of pieces of legislation, really trying to learn from what were the threats that we saw that were outlined in that prior report. How can we stop foreign influence efforts against our electorate, against the American people, utilizing social media to sow discord and distress and disinformation, particularly as it relates to our electoral system. And then from there, it's incredibly important. And I work in a bipartisan manner very frequently. I'm a member of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus. It's 28 Democrats, 28 Republicans. We get together at least once a week. We work on legislation, and we find places where we can, talk about the issues we agree on, debate the issues we disagree on, and move forward from there. And so we've had a lot of really important conversations about how do we, as a bipartisan group, try and work and verbalize that we're standing up for our democracy. I think that certainly it's important, and it's incumbent upon any person in elected office to speak very clearly about the security of our elections, about the value of broader engagement in our elections. And certainly we saw it here in Virginia in just last month. We had elections. We had incredible turnout. And that is, I think, an example for what we should see, be celebrating, that, the more people who engage in our democracy, the better. And sometimes you like the results and sometimes you don't. And that's important. There's another piece sort of related to the influence. I just introduced a bill in the House. It's totally bipartisan in the House. It's totally bipartisan in the Senate. And it's focused actually on closing an FEC loophole, so the Federal Elections Commission. It's called the Protecting Ballot Measures from Foreign Influence Act. And this would actually overturn a July decision from the FEC that actually, if you can believe this, gave the green light to foreign nationals who want to finance campaign efforts related to ballot initiatives. So foreign individuals can't give a campaign funds, but they can now, they got the green light, they can give dollars to ballot initiatives. So if there's a ballot initiative, any sort of example, but that foreign individuals can now interfere in our elections. And right now it's legal, according to the FEC. So I worked with Jim Banks, who's a Republican from Indiana in the House. Mark Warner worked with Senator Rubio from Florida on the Senate side, because this is the space where when we're standing up for our democracy, we should be saying, absolutely, we do not want foreign dollars coming into our elections. And it's, they cannot come in and support candidates, but the fact that they can come in and support ballot initiatives is absolutely unbelievable, and not something that should ever be permissible. So we're working to make sure that the law is clear, and that is indeed not allowed, regardless of if the FEC thinks it's acceptable. We want to pass this law to make sure that it's not.
Great, thank you. Last question of the evening comes from Jason. Jason, you're live. Go ahead and ask your question, please.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Hello? Yes, hi.
Hi,
Thanks for taking my call. Yes, thanks for taking my call. I have a two-part question. One, I know everybody's excited about infrastructure bill, but I'm in the labor force, and we're struggling to do small projects locally and across the state. I don't know where we think we're going to get this labor to do these big projects. And then secondly, why are we wasting money or trying to fund free community college when we need to be funding trade schools? Why are we not pumping those valuable dollars into training qualified, skilled tradesmen, electricians, plumbers, HVAC techs, concrete men, carpenters? That is a bigger shortage than truckers. Why are we wasting money with community college and not putting into trade schools?
So I'm going to start with the first portion of your question, Jason, and then I'm going to get to the second part. So the first one about infrastructure and labor resources. Frankly, I would love to have a follow-up conversation with you about this and just dig into this question a bit more, because I want to make sure that we're planning for the sorts of the sorts of labor challenges that you're discussing. Certainly, I have heard across the board about the labor challenges that exist, frankly, across sectors. But I would love to follow up a little bit more on your specific experiences here locally. So I think my team has your contact information, so we'll follow up there. Secondly, it's important to note, and as much as there has been back and forth, and I have been very, I think, vocal in my assessment that it's not really particularly productive to debate a bill, on television, which, because it leads to a lot of people not necessarily knowing what's in a piece of legislation. Free community college is not in the Build Back Better Act. There were many discussions about putting it in there, so it certainly has been kind of out in the environment of discussion for quite some time, but ultimately it is not in the bill. And then as it relates to trade school and training, I would say that I am a huge supporter of apprenticeship programs and trade training programs. And I have done some work focused on ensuring that Pell Grant funds can be used for certification programs that are shorter in duration. And then I would also note that the Infrastructure Investment in Jobs Act, so that's the bill that's already in law, has multiple provisions in that bill focus on apprenticeship programs. So the bill predominantly allows states flexibility to address surface transportation, workforce development, training, and education needs, addressing current workforce gaps, particularly on construction projects. And the section also permits states to put aside funds for pre-apprenticeship, apprenticeship, and career related opportunities with on-the-job training and vocational school. It also, the infrastructure bill, it does make some modifications to existing grant programs that to ensure that those workforce grants are more usable. It allows for the Secretary of Transportation to award grants for training purposes beyond just the creation of new programs, but in fact to keep people within those programs. And so I can provide you with a lot more information on this specific program and the provisions within the larger infrastructure bill. Again, while I would love to hear about your specific experiences, I will say that there has been and there is recognition that launching a major infrastructure bill will also require us to ensure that we have the workforce to do it. And then one other side piece of legislation that I would mention, separate from the infrastructure bill and separate from kind of the news of the day, is I have a bipartisan bill with Congressman Rob Whitman from our neighboring 1st District called the Freedom to Invest in Tomorrow's Workforce Act. And that bill allows for families who have chosen to save through a 529 program to be able to utilize those programs for workforce training, to be able to use their 529 savings to cover workforce training programs. And so this is a kind of complementary program to individuals who may be saving for education down the line, allowing them to use the funds they want for the training, for the education that they want. Has been a priority of mine. So I introduced that bill a couple years ago in last Congress, and again, I'm continuing it again this Congress, and then notably also advocating for expanded Pell Grant eligibility as a way to ensure that more people have access to workforce training programs. And we'll push out a bit more information related to the workforce training programs that exist within the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act as well, so that people have more information there. And Jason, my office will follow up with you as well in the event that some of these programs might be relevant to you or your business as something that you might be important in the near term or more particular to you.
Great. Thank you for the question, Jason. Congresswoman Spanberger, I'd like to give you the floor to have an opportunity for closing remarks this evening.
I want to thank everyone for joining our telephone town hall. If you're joining on the telephone, on Facebook, on the live stream, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to answer your questions. Thank you for allowing me to enter your living room or your kitchen, wherever you are viewing from. I appreciate the opportunity to answer your questions. I appreciate the opportunity to give some updates on what it is that I'm working on in Congress on your behalf. I do hope that you'll sign up for our newsletter. We typically send out one update a week and give, I think, pretty substantive information about the work that I'm doing in Congress, what my team is doing on behalf of the people that I represent. And to close us out, I just want to remind everyone that one of the primary functions that I have in Congress is also to provide constituent services. So anyone who may be listening, who has a friend, a family member, or themselves who might be facing a challenge with a federal agency, Social Security, the VA, Medicare, the post office, the list goes on. If there's any challenges that we can help you with, I welcome you to be in touch with our office. Notably, we have worked diligently to ensure that people who have earned benefits that they're having trouble getting, Social Security, VA, et cetera, we are working hard to make sure that those dollars are coming to the constituents who've earned them. For those who are waiting on refunds or facing challenges in other places, please know that we can assist and track your cases. We've assisted in, at this point, millions of dollars getting returned to constituents. I'm so proud of what it is that we've been able to achieve so far. We are approaching the $10 million mark returned to constituents since I've arrived in office. And we want to make sure that if we can be of assistance to you, that we are doing that. If you have any questions about the legislation that you might hear about on the news or that you might have heard me talk about tonight, please be in touch with our office. We're happy to answer any questions about the legislation as well. And I just want to thank you all for your time tonight. Thank you for allowing me to answer your questions, and thank you for the honor of representing you. I hope everyone has a wonderful, wonderful holiday season, a wonderful Christmas if you're celebrating Christmas, and I hope everyone has an incredibly joyous new year. I look forward to connecting with you via virtual town halls and also seeing you at in-person town halls in the future. Again, thank you for your time. I wish you a very happy holiday, and thank you for joining us this evening.